Hello, everyone. Welcome to our presentation today, A Day in the Life of NextGen Architect. My name is Dan Hebda. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer here at Mega International. I'll be leading the first part of the presentation, discussing some of the context. Then I'll hand it off to our pre-sales manager, Nick Hatfield, who will take you through some aspects of the product demonstration. If you do have any questions, you can put them into the chat, and we'll look to address them at the end of the presentation itself. Bear with me as I minimize the other screen so I can see the next slides. All right, let me jump into it. So first, just a little bit about who Mega is and some of the trends that are going on in the marketplace that'll set the stage for the next gen architect conversation. So for those who don't know, Mega's been around since 1991. So we've got more than 32 years in the market. We are a SaaS provider of enterprise architecture solutions. We do have a broad user base across the globe. You can see listed here 52 countries. And probably what we're most proud about is the industry recognition. In the last year, four different analyst firms have recognized Mega and our solutions among the top in the industry. Into a little bit about the market, there's a trend that's been going on really since the pandemic is a shift from the ability to choose between whether to focus on, for example, lean, agile, or resiliency, to prioritize whether you plan or adapt, to now needing to do all of it. Because there is this notion that you need to be resilient or what we call future proof. And in order to do that, it requires a greater level of visibility, a greater level of transparency, and a greater coordination between the different elements of an organization. And the future, it really depends on the next gen architect to deliver on that. Some of the key challenges that you'll see presented would be, of course, cloud continues to be a major element and trend. This isn't new, but it did resurge throughout the pandemic and continues to be one of the top priorities. Data, of course, continues to be critical and important. Security, but maybe more interesting is that these intersect with each other. Each of these points, of course, a challenge on its own, but also needing to ensure, for example, that the right data is in the cloud, that it's also secure, that processes can be digitized again in a secure way, but in a sustainable way, and that all of these intermingle. And it comes into then really setting the stage for that view of the next gen architect. So, what is a next gen architect? Well, there has been a shift in the marketplace, and it is a positive shift that continues. That enterprise architects have traditionally been seen as overly academic. They've been focused on documentation, cataloging, data management, pulling information together, and just a very ivory tower viewed perspective where they might put forth standards or a vision without any real accountability, spending too much time on manicuring the data that feeds the architecture itself. The next gen architect is one that really focuses on outcomes. It's really looking to deliver concrete, recognizable value to the business. And the test that I like to use for the next gen architect is the value that you deliver to the business. Is it acknowledged by those outside of the architecture practice itself? So if you talk to the different stakeholders, would they recognize the value that you deliver and where it comes from? Some of the evolution that you'll see as it relates to the next gen architect is that lower maturity practices tend to get stuck in the application portfolio space. Application portfolio is a great place to start your enterprise architecture initiative and practice. It delivers high value in a very short amount of time with a reasonable amount of resource requirements. But if you don't focus that on a transformative outcome, it's going to be hard to get the business to see that value. And again, that's where the next gen architect comes into play. It's building on that catalog and driving in a vision that expands the services your EA practice offers into cloud. It could be cloud architecture, cloud migration support, ensuring again that the right data, another dimension listed here, is available in the cloud, secured properly, and that the organization is transforming. In the bubble that's floating, you'll note IT centric approaches don't deliver business value. Even though the core of what's presented on the slide may have an IT lens, the next gen architect ensures that it's underpinning business transformation, that the cloud vision, data security, and digitization are all driving the future state of the business. And that's where we want to get modern architects in line with. When we look to value and articulation, it's important for me that we encourage architecture practices not to debate what enterprise architecture is, but really what's the purpose and value of enterprise architecture. And the easiest way to start illustrating that is to define a set of services that your EA practice offers. So, a couple of examples are pictured on the slide here. You can see at the bottom the application portfolio management, where the rationalization of applications and or the management of tech debt and obsolescence would be listed. Those are great starting areas that can work as building blocks. And we can start to expand on that and offer additional value oriented services to the organization. So you can see a couple of examples under the secure layer. We can look at, for example, policy and regulatory compliance. We can design elements of the security. We can look for data governance solutions like glossary management and compliance. And again, can continue to build on that, offering value to the business with clear stakeholders, clear expectation, and clear outcomes. And so this is the element of the next gen architect really is focused on delivering measurable, recognizable value by those outside of the EA practice itself. So moving on beyond what the next gen architecture is, or architect rather, sorry, is the next gen EA practice is the architect leveraging certain methods and tooling to help enable. And what's different about the next gen architect and as it relates to your role on any given day? Well, if we look at some typical ways in which architects may begin, we would start with discovery, collecting, obtaining, manicuring the data that's necessary for the transformative decisions that we're going to help guide. So, discover is a common phase. And in a traditional architecture sense, or I should say historical architecture sense, the architects may get stuck on this phase. They may spend too much time believing that the procurement of the list is the outcome that they're targeting itself. And of course, it's not. The procurement of the list, the information, the data is only a necessary step in order to use that information to be able to assess it, to understand where there are problems in the portfolio or the architecture so that you can plan for a prioritized transformation. The next gen architect is going to accelerate the way in which they move from the left side of the slide towards the right so that they can really focus on more value oriented elements. The next gen architect is also going to leverage the intersection between different perspectives on enterprise architecture. So we have the traditional enterprise architecture focus on the far left, where you might see things like capability models and value streams in a business architecture lens. You might have the portfolios and the different criteria by which you assess them or their life cycles, project portfolio management as you plan and organize transformation, and even solution architecture as you design innovative new solutions. But if I do that in a silo and not in the context of other elements, I miss opportunity for increased value. So we're going to move into business process management analysis and design. I can look for increased operational efficiencies, process based innovation, expanding on the way in which we interact with our customer base to ensure the customer journeys are solid. I can put in a risk perspective and dimension so that I can look at risks in the context of those processes or the IT architecture elements that I mentioned earlier. I can use it to define and articulate controls, manage audits, execute on compliance to validate that I'm aligned with the different regulations, and ensure that I've got the resilience and the business continuity vision in place, again, leveraging process and IT architectural elements. Carrying it further to one of our newest solutions is data governance, where I can now look at how data and information cut across all of those three other boxes. So, how does it flow through IT, through process, and what does it mean from an ethical or regulatory perspective? The shift now in terms of the day in the life of the next gen architect is that the next gen architect spends less time procuring that data and managing that information and focusing on historical documentation and spends more time on the analytics, the insight, and the value that can be provided by looking across these different touch points. So, part of the technological way we enable that, you see listed at the bottom of the screen. We can start to discover different elements of data so that the architects themselves aren't looking to go out manually to find it. So, we can run SaaS discovery, IT discoveries, we can do data discoveries, we can do process mining and task mining to find all this information, bring it and make it available to the architects so that they can really quickly move on to the more value oriented elements. So, in this pyramid type of perspective, I focus on discovering the data, using technologies in the platform to help organize and filter that data to fit it so that it's in the right views for my analysis. I connect it up to relevant other sets of data, cross-referencing between, for example, the enterprise architecture, the process, the risk, or the data perspectives, but also connecting it up to industry and data, regulatory data that comes from outside. So making it very, very rapid to have a baseline of information that I can use to drive the transformative insights that I'm looking to deliver. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Nick to walk through some of the ways in which you can leverage technology and tooling to help accelerate your transformation into a next gen architect, and the ways in which our platform can help you accelerate that data manicuring and move over into that smart insight. Nick, if you want to take over, I'll stop sharing.
All right, I am sharing my screen. If Dan, you can just let me know when you're able to see the window, that would be great.
It's loading. There we go. I can see it.
Perfect. All right. Let me just move this over here. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining us for today's presentation. See a really good mix in the audience. If you have any questions, comments, you can input those directly into the comment box. We'll take all of those at the end. If there's something that maybe you want to take offline or get a deeper dive, we can absolutely do that. You can reach out to myself, Dan, or Elsbeth, and we can set up a demonstration or just take a little bit more of a focused approach to any one of these concepts. So we're focused on today the role of the next gen architect. For us, it's simplifying the inputs and focusing on the outputs in the enterprise architecture platform in order to make more better actionable decisions. So for today's demonstration, we're going to focus on the platform. I'll show you some of the inputs, some of the reporting that we have, recommendations, some of the analysis that we can provide, and then we'll end with a dashboard style view. So assuming everyone is with me so far, this is HopeX. If this is your first time seeing it, welcome. It's role-based access. So I'm accessing this as an IT business manager. With this role, I get a lot of different reports, visualizations that are made available to me, but I might not have as much depth or detail as a more specific role. For instance, an IT architect that's focused on the solution architecture is going to have customized reports and settings for that. Process designer, same idea. But those are the roles out of the box, and it's pretty straightforward for our customers to configure those to their exact specifications. Regardless, the look and feel is the same across the platform. Navigation on the left-hand side, we have some menus, some buttons with some other sub-menus that are hidden. There's a notification engine that you can access here in the top right. This is especially useful for crowdsourcing, using workflows in order to maintain the repository and enrich the objects, enrich the artifacts that you already have. So that's the general look and feel. It's tile-based, so you can move these around. But a lot of our customers, when they're first beginning with HopeX, they might want to integrate with other systems, perform some kind of discovery. So we have partners, we have technology that's embedded in the platform to help with that. But then we also provide something like what you see on your screen right now. This is a customized Excel template that's made available to all of our customers to help with the initial data, to get the data into the repository. So you can see I've got several different worksheets here at the bottom. It's where you can import a business process, import it, put it in the catalog, and then describe it in BPMN notation later on when that time comes. In business capabilities, you can describe the functionalities of an application. The tab I'm on right now describes applications. So I've already described 2 applications. I just kind of made up some generic examples, gave it a brief description or a comment. You can have a type. These are just some of the out-of-the-box attributes, fields that we provide. Nothing that you see on any of these worksheet tabs or within
Nick,
any one of these. Yes.
the Excel sheet's not showing, just the HopeX screen.
Okay, I apologize. I'm not sure why that is. Let me just try to reshare again. We'll try this one other time, and if we have success, otherwise we'll just keep it moving. Hopefully, I'm sharing again now. Hopefully you can see this Excel sheet.
It's
There
loading.
we are.
Yes, we see the
Okay,
Excel
I've got
sheet
my
now.
preview on the right monitor. I apologize, it's a new platform that we're using for these webinars. Anyways, this is what it looks like. So at the bottom here, you have the tabs that I was just describing, as well as here we're looking at an application. So we can describe the code, the type, but none of these are required. The only thing that might be required is the name of an application, or if you want to connect a technology, input the name of the technology, right? So there's no required fields here. And the big idea behind this is that we can take all of this information, we can import it, and then we can automatically generate reports for you on the fly. So you might have seen a couple of the different types that we allow you to import from. I'm assuming that you can still see my screen here. Excel for sure. You can import from Visio. If you already had a HOPEX file, for example, you could do that. XML files are acceptable, especially as a configuration file if you're importing some kind of Visio. But it's a pretty straightforward process. We have import sheets available for applications, for process. I import it. It will give me an error file if I have anything that's incorrect or wrong or just missing. And it's that straightforward. So we import from Excel. We've already described these applications, and then we can go and access our application. So I put the little asterisk on back office software just because I like to put it at the very top of my list. So here we have back office software, my list of applications. I can now click to that, and all the inputs that you saw on that Excel sheet are now going to be present. So this is that initial data feed, right? It's simple, it's easy, and then you can start to enrich as you need to. So for example, I have this business process right here. It's called Manage Back Office. It exists in the catalog, but I can just automatically start to enrich upon this. Well, what does it mean when we manage the back office? Well, we can add participants to this. We can give it a name. We can reuse anything that already exists. So if I just start typing in something, I'll get a recommendation. So we've already got Adobe Systems. That's something that belongs. We can add a second participant here. Just press another letter. We'll get the recommendation. And this is all supported by BPMN format. So if I want to add something here that maybe shouldn't be a part of that, shouldn't be a part of this flow, I have that capability. So we can add to this, we can add different processes and organizational process. We can get into operations and things like that. Give it a name, and then we have some capabilities here to automatically clean this up. So once I start to add a couple of processes, and to keep it moving, I'll just add something very quickly. Connect it with a sequence flow. We can connect it to our start and end point. Then we have this nice feature here where if I can just get whatever I want on the diagram and then automatically clean it up, vertical or horizontal, depending on what you like. As you add more to this diagram, that functionality is going to automatically keep up with it. We can navigate right back to our application. So we've already described that specific business process. We can get more in depth with our business capability model, adding these together. Something I didn't show you on the sheet, though, is that we have an input for exchange. So in this exchange, we can describe what is being sent and or received from application A to application B. And we can also visualize what is the content. So for my example here, I have some kind of customer information that's being exchanged. That's just a logical description of the data. If you want it to get more in depth with the data, you can absolutely describe the logical classes that are being used here. Again, it's the same idea. I'm adding a data here. We can define its CRUD access rights. We can also categorize it. So I've already added one category for sensitive, but we could also say maybe this is some kind of golden data. And everything that you see that I'm doing right now, we can automatically generate reports. We can also import it exactly straight through that Excel sheet. So here I have one that's showing me the content that's being sent from the back office software to the other Photo Studio application that we imported. And then I have my content here. This is dynamic. I could actually click on this content and understand every other context, every other flow that it exists in. What are all of my other applications that are using this? Additionally, I have a report that will show me everything I would want to know about the data that this application is using. So we just connected one logical class there. So we won't have a lot of information here, but we can enrich this over time. We can assess the data, what's the quality of the data, what's the freshness, and then automatically visualize that on our report. And everything that you see is automatically updated as we work through our example here. Seems like I'm hitting a tiny bit of a hiccup with this report here, but that's the idea. We have all these different inputs. There's a variety of ways you can get it into the system, automatically generate reports, and then start to make more actionable decisions. So if I navigate back to my home page, I can open up, for example, a business capability breakdown, a report that will show all of my business capabilities, level 1 through 3, plus or minus 1, depending on what you might need as a customer. And then understand how are we fulfilling the need of that business capability from an IT or people process perspective. Seems like I hit a little bit of a bug here. My apologies.
Yeah, Nick, while you're doing that, you might be hitting a network issue. Your camera is also kind of zooming in and out. So maybe just get recollected and I'll address a question that has been posed in the
Sure.
meantime. So there was a question around the management of data and the discovery of data, that the challenge of how much data is required for some of the value that architecture practices often offer. And it's a great question. It really touches at the heart of the notion for next gen architect. And so we've got a couple of elements technologically and then some methodologically that we use to address that. So the first is that we do have in the platform open APIs and a GraphQL endpoint so that you can integrate and tie into different technological systems to feed on that data without requiring heavy manual intervention. Additionally, we've released integrations with or the providing of discovery tools so that we can find SaaS elements, IT elements, products across your network, for example, data discovery, process mining, and that information can also be brought in. In the IT discovery example, just to walk through verbally storyline, and I'll hand it back over to Nick in just a minute. The platform would essentially show you the things that were found that haven't yet been reconciled into the architecture. And so the first load, you may have a significant number of elements that gets discovered. You organize them, you fit them into the portfolios, you start your architectural work. And then the next iteration, of course, that what it finds should be just what's new. And of course, a much smaller set will be notified to the architect. They can then mitigate, align them, put them into the architecture, or they can realize that there's something that doesn't belong in the architecture and go find the group that caused that network, the technology to be discovered and see why it's there. Additionally, we have, and this gets on the tooling slash method side, we have this concept we call a data call. So that as you are manicuring and validating, keeping the data accurate, that you can push that data out to data stewards of sort. And so if I have individuals who are experts in certain of the applications, for example, and other individuals maybe who are process owners, and other individuals who are literal data stewards within the data governance group, you can tag that data with the ownership and the responsibilities. And on some schedule that you determine, you can push out and say, hey, you know what, I've got to let every month, I've got to get these applications validated. And every quarter, I've got to get these processes reviewed. And then it will notify them all by email with hyperlinks where they can see just the small set of data that they need to interact with so that they can revalidate it, put it in, fill gaps, update information as needed, submit it back, and then the architecture team receives it. There are some other general practices. I guess I'll leave with one last purely methodological one, which is ensure that those who are contributing in the crowdsourcing of that data and the validation thereof understand the value and purpose for the use of that data so that they see that it's not just a waste of time, to put it bluntly. If they have an academic perspective on EA, that it's an ivory tower that doesn't deliver value, and you look for data stewards and app owners and process owners to contribute, they're less likely to do it reliably if they don't see the value that the EA practice is offering with that data. So if you can elevate visibility to those services and the value offered, you'll get greater contribution from those stewards to help keep that data up to date so that the architects can focus more and more on the analytics and the insight that we can glean from the cross reference between that data. So if there's subsequent follow-up to that question, of course, type it back into the chat. We're happy to elaborate in a moment. I want to get back to Nick's presentation and hopefully the network issue is resolved.
Yeah, that was a great segue. Thank you, Dan. I think we're in good shape again now. I did just turn off my camera. I am still here though. So excellent questions about the workflows. That's absolutely something we can manage, as well as with the design of IT systems. So what I loaded up here is a view where we're looking at the applications and integrations that we have. So specifically, it's airportmega.com. It makes some kind of request, and it's receiving data back from an online ordering platform. So with this, we're able to describe our current state. So with these diagrams, in the same way that you saw with the business process flow, we can add to this, we can take away, and then we can automatically generate some reports. So if I take this report desk, which again, we're just reusing this report desk application from the IT portfolio management, same application, and then we can add it to our diagram here. So we can enrich in that way in our current state, but then based on our, what our strategy is, our goals, our objectives, we can focus on the business capabilities that need the most attention. Business capabilities that are high in business value, those should have a specific focus. Specifically from a people, process, and then here, what we're looking at, solution architecture, technology perspective, how are we fulfilling that? So if we have a specific capability, we need some kind of innovation. We can look at IT, we can describe the current state, which I've already done here, but then we can build an even better future state to meet those needs, to save money, to drive revenue, reduce risk, right? Threats and vulnerability, focus on that. To then put together a report like this where we can analyze the delta between a current and a future state. So as I move my slider from right to left, we have a future state. We've enriched with more data. We understand our data better. We've replaced some of these applications. We've removed some others. You can see what the red means there's a removal, and then when it's green, that means we're adding something. And then when I scroll down, we have a checklist of all the changes. So if there's an API, an application that's being deleted, created, or modified, we can go to this table, we can analyze that, but then we can enter these into a project and manage it from that perspective. So we have these capabilities to manage a current and future state. The report or visualization that I was going to drive through before I had a network issue is our business capability breakdown. So I put the cart in front of the horse, so to speak, a little bit there with the solution architecture. But when we make these choices, when we make these decisions, we can derive it from the automation that we've already done. So we've got our data in here. We've already enriched. We've used the workflows and crowdsourcing that was asked about, and then we can start to enrich with the assessments, life cycle information, and that's what we have on the screen right here. So it's 3 levels of capabilities. It's the airport capability map. I have a level 1 called business support or analytics, and I have some level 2 capabilities as well as maybe some additional level 3s. We can visualize a business process, visualize an application, and then start to make deductions around this. So if I have some kind of application that's high in business value, but it's low in functional support, which means it's not providing a lot of functionalities IT functionalities, maybe there's an opportunity to enhance on that, get more functionalities out of it, especially if it has a higher technical efficiency, which is where we're looking at how well is this application actually designed? How well is it actually coded? We can make those decisions, and then we can use that current and future state analysis to generate reports that will tell us maybe we should take a certain decision about this application, but then also to reuse all the flows that we already have. So there's an engine here that can tell us we should rationalize, we should enhance, maybe we should remove something. And then once we've already described those flows, we have this tool that lets us automatically initialize our diagram based on that information. We call it an application environment. So I'll just switch here to this example. You press new to create a new environment. So this would be where we want to describe a new use case. So we've already loaded in the back office software. We've assessed its business value. Now we want to start to make some additional connections, utilizing the information that we already have. So in the previous example, we were looking at a structure diagram, which is focused on the integrations and the APIs. But then we can also just focus on the flows. So it's a matter of maturity sometimes, but we can check what content we want to reuse. So I only had one exchange flow in there with this Photo Studio application, but if I had multiples in here, those would be listed out as well. But I'll take the one example that we have. We'll press OK. It's the same auto layout feature that you saw with the business process. Now we've added our Photo Studio, but we have a new use case, a new application that we want to add or reuse here based on the needs of the business. So when we've looked at our capabilities, we've described, we understand what is important, where we need to make those changes. We need to enrich upon this current system, and we need some more functionality. So now I've taken existing data, I've added on to that for my new exciting use case with our airportmega.com. So this is just one of the examples that we have for the Next Gen Architect. We covered quite a bit of ground here. Of course, we can take some more deep dives and take some things offline, but then we also have a portal for all of this. So this is an EA portal. We call this HopeX 360. It's intended for self-service, so that anyone within your organization, they can go to this website, they can pull out any kind of report, diagram, visualization, whatever it might be that they need. Navigation at the top, so everything that you saw in the demo could be included here, a business process. We didn't get a lot into the data governance, but a business glossary, data architecture is included here, as well as a list of applications, list of technologies. So it's a pretty straightforward view here. I have a list of applications on the left-hand side, some of these unique identifiers, the code, does it have a version, the business capabilities that it supports. We can drill into the application. We have another version of an ID card, but then we have even more information. So what is being sent and received between this application? Again, automatically generated report. We can also understand maybe the technologies that are supported here, and we can add and subtract as we like. Maybe it's involved in some different projects. The iconography that you see is our own. So the green and white puzzle piece, we're always referring back to an application. We have a symbol for our project. We have a symbol for a process. We have a symbol for a business capability. Those are the automatically generated reports, but then we also have the diagram. So if I want a picture of my diagram, this is even something that we could drill into here. Here we're looking at the services. We have a data area. It's called aircraft maintenance. We can further describe that as we need to, as well as additional factors. Who's the owner? What level of responsibility do they have? This is used for those automatic workflows. If you need a specific assessment or you want to update the cost of an application, easily crowdsource that using these responsibilities, as well as just some other data points about the business process, the project, sent and received data flows, and then a dashboard style view. So this dashboard view, this is something that we can filter, to get more meaning out of it. If I want to focus on a specific portfolio, for example, I can take my global application portfolio. I can filter this way. What type of applications do we have? What's the life cycle information? How many will be in retirement, in production at a given point in time? What vendors are we using the most? What applications are used in a business process? As well as heat maps, looking at compliance. And the whole idea is so that we can make forward-looking decisions based on the information that we have that's going to be more actionable, help us transform faster. So that was what I wanted to share with you in my demonstration. There are definitely some other reports that I'd love to share with you. The smart analysis, which I mentioned, we have more obsolescence reports around applications and technologies. It will give you a readout about start and end dates and what's the impact, what application, what technology, what even data is going to be impacted if I decide to retire or if I decide to enhance some kind of system. But we'll stop with the demonstration for now. We can go to the questions and answers, and if there's anything else specific that someone would like to see in the platform, we can use the remaining time that we have to focus on those areas. But otherwise, thank you. And Dan, I'll kick it back to you. Yeah, thank you.
Yep. So I'm going to see it open up now. If anybody does have questions, please type them into the chat. And I've put up on the screen a conclusion slide so that you can see Nick and my email. Please do feel free to reach out to either of us. I like to remind people that my role is not directly involved in sales. So if you're just looking for advice and direction on enterprise architecture, I'm happy to share some of the insights that I have. And so I'll just give it a few more moments. I don't see any additional questions just yet. But if you do have questions, again, please feel free to type them into the chat. We'll be happy to address them at the moment. Otherwise, if you would capture my or Nick's email, we'd be happy to address them offline. We'll just wait a couple more minutes to see if there's any questions that come up. Otherwise, just to reiterate something as people are here, if you are looking for that next gen architect evolution and you're wondering what data to capture because it does seem overwhelming, you start with the purpose of EA. Why does your EA practice exist? What are the services that your EA practice is offered? Oh, there is a question section. Good. Thank you very much for that. And when you go to the purpose for your EA practice, the services, then you can identify the data. and that will let you optimize. I'm going to turn my camera back on, but just so you know, my questions are on the other screen. So if you see me looking over to the side every now and then, that's why. So let's see, just to clarify, what types of application information is necessary from an IT and system to support application portfolio management? So really, it depends. It goes back to what I mentioned just a second ago. What is the service that you're looking to offer? First would be visibility into the inventory. And some organizations, they need that. They're struggling even to know what technologies are there. So right away, it's the inventory level. We do have a service that provides lifecycle data. So if you have that inventory that can be discovered, then the lifecycle data can be looked up so you can understand the vendor's perspective on support for those applications and technologies. And that right away gives you some value and insight if you know that, for example, a business is dependent on a technology and its life cycle is about to end. So you can start from there. Additionally, we can then map those applications and technologies up to the business capabilities they support, which gives you some greater visibility. And then you can continue to elaborate. So, for example, we could have our own life cycle. So, we have the vendor life cycle. You could have your life cycle. So, if I know that a technology is going to be end of life, that let's say at the end of the year, of course, you're not going to want to wait for the end of the year for the internal life cycle. So, you set your own, and then you can put additional information as is needed. If the service and the value you're offering gets into, for example, costing, you could take it into a cost direction. There's assessments that can be done, and that's an efficient, effective way to gain value. So you could collect data around whether the business perceives the technologies to be valuable, to be stable. And so those are just some examples that exist. Of course, there are more. I'm looking to some additional questions, and if you'd like an elaboration on what I say, feel free to request that. Where does operation control such as IT asset management intersect with application portfolio management? So great question. And again, it goes back to that first defining what is it the service that the enterprise architecture team is offering. And as you articulate clearly the value you're offering, the services you offer, you'll be able to establish clear boundaries between the asset management side and the architectural side, and let's say in a portfolio context. I like to say that the portfolio are the decisions that are made. So we can discover what exists. Those are the assets. And then when we choose to put them in the portfolio and choose to maintain them in a certain way, that's the portfolio management side. So absolutely there can be an overlap. There can be a relationship, and it can be even used as a validation mechanism. So if I see that when I'm looking at discoveries and I'm looking into the asset management, that we have technologies and applications and other elements that are not part of the portfolio, we ask the question, why are they there? We've seen great success. It's a very simplistic model, but it works well where if you put, for example, a unique identifier on the portfolio elements, and then within the organization, support for technology is tied to that unique identifier, then if assets exist that aren't part of the portfolio, there's no identifier, they don't get support. And it helps root out the shadow IT. And it doesn't mean, of course, that you dismiss it right away. It poses a question. Why is that technology there? Why is it not in the portfolio? It may need to be assessed and incorporated into the portfolio, or it may be determined that the technology doesn't belong. But it is a great question, one that's determined by the clarity of the service the EA practice provides around portfolio, application portfolio specifically, and assets. Let me go back for a second to the chat. So apologies that I'm looking over to the side just to see if there's any further questions being asked here or clarification. There's not. So if you do have additional questions or clarification, again, feel free either to put it into the chat or into the question section, and or you can send us emails and we'll take it offline. We're happy to address it further with you. So I'll just wait. I guess we'll wait just a couple more minutes to see if any additional questions or comments come up. And otherwise, Nick and I would like to thank you on behalf of MEGA for your participation today. We look forward to sharing additional exciting news from MEGA about the technological innovations that are coming out in support of Next Gen Architect. And in the meantime, again, feel free to email us, or if you're still here at the moment, pose more questions or comments in the chat. I do see someone typing, so I'll wait just to respond to that. But again, thank you. And a reminder, I'm not sales, so there'll be no pressure if you reach out for questions. Okay, thank you very much. There's just some thank yous being written into the comment section. So appreciate your time, everyone. I look forward to seeing you in a future webinar presentation. And please, good luck with clarification of the value offer in your architecture practices.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.